Every 25th of February, Filipinos commemorate the day when democracy trumped the dictatorship. It's been 28 years since thousands of Filipinos gathered along Metro Manila's EDSA highway to oust dictator Ferdinand Marcos. This year, President Benigno Aquino departs from tradition. Natashya Gutierrez joins us from Tacloban. Natashya?
The flag, the Virgin Mary, the flowers.
Yes, for the first time in history, President Benigno Aquino III chooses to celebrate the EDSA People Power Revolution anniversary outside of Manila. He also staged the annual Salubungan in Cebu and spends the day visiting provinces to check on the progress of his administration's rehabilitation efforts. The president hails his government's project to build back better, but he also learns of a serious problem. From Cebu to Davao Oriental to Leyte, rehabilitation is too slow, according to victims and local government officials. In Tacloban, which was hardest hit by Yolanda, only 1% of the affected community is living in bunkhouses. Victims say they feel the support of non-government organizations like the United Nations, but not of the government. This is what Aquino has to say about the criticism of slow relief and why it's taking longer than planned for the national government to fund rehabilitation projects.
Lahat lang kailangan i-vet, okay? I-vet, bakit nyo i-verify? Tama to. Kasi kailangan na yung tatayo natin, makakatulong doon sa komunidad na higit kaysa doon sa dating tinutulong itong mga iba't ibang mga infrastruktura. Sa Bantayan in particular.
But he is also adding that the government is doing enough. Aquino attends a groundbreaking for permanent housing in Panawan, Leyte for Yolanda victims, and says the government is working with other countries to rehabilitate schools, as well as private companies to meet infrastructure needs like the building of Eastern Visayas Regional Medical Center Hospital in Tacloban. This, on top of the various efforts outlined by Aquino, including continued distribution of food packs, cash for work programs, and restoring victims' livelihoods.
Alam mo baka dapat interviewin nyo yung mga foreign aid workers, no? UN and others, no? Dahil sila, ang parating umabot sa akin, binabanggit nung may nagkaroon na trahedya sa Haiti. O yung nagawa natin raw sa isang buwan, nagawa dun sa lugar na yon in 1 year.
Aquino does admit, though, the administration still needs to work on restoring electricity. In Davao Oriental, he learned 57% are still without power over a year since Typhoon Pablo, while bunkhouses in Tacloban have no electricity, despite the government's promise it would provide it for free. He admits they still have work to do, but denies the government is not doing enough.
We may not have been perfect, no, and I'll admit that. Pero para sabihin na we didn't exercise a maximum effort, medyo over naman yata yun.
Indeed, Chai, it's an unusual way to celebrate the 28th anniversary of EDSA, but Aquino argues his decision to tour calamity-hit areas is appropriate. The president says victims embody the true spirit of EDSA by their ability to rise to whatever challenge they face.
Natashya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Yes. Could you tell us a little bit about how the president was received in Leyte? Was there resentment? Was there impatience? Did they try to communicate to him what they were feeling?
Not at all, actually, and almost surprisingly, when he came, it was almost like he was being treated like a celebrity. It actually reminded me a lot of the May 2013 elections. There were flags being waved, everyone was wearing yellow, everyone was cheering his name. Surprisingly, though, this sentiment is very different in bunkhouses. So I also had the chance to visit victims who were living in the bunkhouses, and the feeling is completely different from those who actually did attend his appearances. Those people in bunkhouses felt a little more, I would probably use the word disappointed. They said they wanted to see more from the government. Of course, they were grateful about being moved from tents or from the Astrodome or from evacuation centers to bunkhouses, which have a little more privacy. But still, they do not have electricity there yet. There's not enough food relief packs. And aside from those living in bunkhouses, I also talked to others who are trying to rebuild their lives on their own. And of course, those have more negative feelings towards the government. So it was actually a very interesting thing to see that stark contrast, to see very enthusiastic Filipinos in the events that I attended, and being able to talk to actual victims and having a completely different reaction coming from them.
I suppose you had the opportunity to go around Leyte as well. Could you give us your own assessment based on the things that you saw yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, to be honest, there has been progress in Leyte, obviously compared to the first few weeks after Yolanda, where we still saw dead bodies. Obviously that has been cleaned up. Bunk houses are being built. Most people I talked to, however, said they were not involved in the Cash for Work program that the government has been boasting about. I did speak to one person who said she was working with EDSA, but majority of people said they hadn't even heard of the Cash for Work program with the government, that they had heard of other Cash for Work programs from the non-governmental organizations. And as I mentioned earlier, it's actually these foreign foundations, such as the United Nations, that seem to be doing a bulk of the work. You look at all the tents that they're staying in, and they're all provided by the United Nations. Other victims say they're building their own houses, helped by private companies. Most of them do say they have accepted relief food packs actually from the government, but they also say these aren't enough. But is there progress? Yes, there is. However, I am hesitant to say it's significant progress because there's one glaring factor we can't ignore. It's the fact that electricity in the province, actually in many of these hard-hit areas, are still not back. I was driving just now past sunset, and it was mostly dark. And this is just very different from what Aquino's administration has been saying. They've been saying that Secretary Castillo was able to restore 99% of energy. That's absolutely not true. Tacloban Mayor Alfred Romualdez, in fact, told us today that his estimate is about only 45 to 50%. And of course, this is a huge problem because the United Nations itself says that restoring electricity is the first step to recovery. And that is unfortunately just not the truth for the people here in Leyte.
Thank you very much, Natashya, reporting from Tanawan in Leyte.